Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today, we continue following the touching and tumultuous love story between single mother Lai Hoi-Ca and police officer Hung, a budding romance blossoming amidst life's trials. In the previous episodes, Ca and Hung's affection for each other had begun to grow sincerely. Hung not only showed love for Ca but also cared deeply for her young child as if his own flesh and blood. When Hung was injured during a mission, it was Ca who stayed by his side, tending to him with gentle care. Her tenderness and patience slowly softened the heart of the once resolute officer, filling it with emotions he had long hidden away. However, just as love began to bloom, storms rolled in. Hung's mother, a woman who had vehemently opposed their relationship, returned as soon as she heard her son was still seeing Hoi-Ca hardened by past wounds and bound by heavy prejudice. She was determined to break them apart by any means necessary. And that wasn't the end of the trouble. A new character emerged, a mysterious man with a charming appearance and unexpected warmth towards Ca. He quickly approached her and made his intentions to pursue her clear, stirring up new emotions in an already fragile relationship. Will Hung and Ca have enough faith to hold on to each other through the storm? Will this new man awaken Hoi-Ca's heart once more? And what will Hung's mother do to stop their love? Stay tuned until the end of today's video to discover the next emotional and dramatic twists in this challenging, yet hope-filled love story. Early that morning, as the sun was just peeking through the lush green bamboo groves, the countryside still lay wrapped in a dreamy slumber. The distant crowing of roosters echoed through the air, blending with the rustling of wind sweeping over young rice fields, creating a peaceful symphony of rural tranquility. Amid this serene setting, Lai Hoi-Ca, a single mother with sorrowful eyes and a gentle smile, quietly awoke to begin her new day. She stepped out of her modest home, a woven basket in hand, barefoot on the familiar dirt path that led to the lotus pond behind the village. It was the peak of lotus season. Soft pink blossoms shyly stretched out among the sea of green leaves, their fragrance drifting faintly and sweetly in the morning air. The early sunlight slanted across the water, casting golden sparkles like glittering gold on the pond's surface. Wading into the water with her calloused feet, hardened by the years, Ca moved steadily, each step firm despite the weight of life she bore. Mud clung to the hem of her pants, the chill of water seeped into her skin, but she paid it no mind. In her heart, there was only one thought: to pick the freshest, most beautiful lotuses to sell at the market, to earn a little money for her and her child to get by. Each bloom she gathered was treated like a precious treasure. She picked them delicately and placed them in her basket lined with fresh banana leaves. As she paused to wipe the sweat from her brow with the back of her hand, her gaze drifted toward the horizon, where the sun continued to rise, carrying with it a fragile hope for the challenging day ahead. Once her basket was full, she returned home and carefully wrapped each bundle of lotus, arranging them neatly in a bamboo crate. Taking her young child by the hand, she headed to the market, weaving through the bustling crowd of buyers and sellers. Many stopped, not just because her flowers were beautiful, but because of the sincerity and kindness that radiated from the gentle smile of the young mother. Each bouquet she handed over carried a piece of her love, a small seed of hope in a world still full of worry. As the market quieted and people left, mother and child walked the empty country road back home. The afternoon breeze blew softly, carrying the gentle scent of lotus that lingered on her clothes. The child chattered excitedly, while Ca simply smiled, her eyes distant, perhaps dreaming of a more stable life for her little one. Suddenly, voices rose ahead. A small crowd had gathered by the roadside, murmuring in alarm. Ca rushed forward and saw a man who had crashed his motorbike. He was lying on his side by the road, blood trickling down his forehead, his face contorted in pain. Without hesitation, Ca set down her basket and hurried to help him sit up. She gently wiped the blood with her handkerchief, checked his injuries, and asked softly about his condition. Her child shyly approached as well, offering the water bottle they had brought. Though the man was a stranger, CA could not turn away from someone in pain, her heart simply wouldn't allow it. After a few moments of dizziness, the man slowly regained his composure. Seeing the concern in her eyes and hearing the warmth in her voice, he was moved beyond words. He hadn't expected, on such a quiet countryside road, to find someone willing to help so selflessly. "Thank you, truly. I'm so grateful," he said. "Please, may I know your name and where you live? I must repay this kindness." CA only smiled, as gently as a lotus blooming in the dawn. "It's nothing," she replied softly. "I only did what anyone should do. You don't need to worry about it." But the man insisted. His gaze was earnest. It wasn't a polite gesture, it was sincere gratitude etched deep into his heart. As for Hung, ever since he was injured on duty, his recovery had been swift, thanks to CA's devoted care. But more than that, he began to feel the bond between them growing deeper. Each time he caught the worry in her eyes, or heard the innocent voice of her child calling him Uncle Hung, it warmed his heart amidst the stress of work and the burdens of family expectations. But peace was never meant to last. Far away in a rural town, Hung's mother, a widow known for her conservative and reclusive ways, received a phone call from a nosy neighbor. They whispered that her son was still seeing a woman who had once been married and was now raising a child not his own. Worse still, the two acted like a real couple, openly affectionate. The news shocked and infuriated her. She dropped everything, determined to return home and put an end to what she called a shameful affair. Hung had anticipated his mother's return. He knew her nature well. Once she disapproved of something, nothing could change her mind. From the moment he heard she was coming back, he grew quieter, more cautious during his visits to CA. It wasn't regret over loving her, it was fear. Fear that his mother would come and wound the woman he cared for with harsh words and harsh judgment. Yet his love never wavered. Instead of coming during the day, Hung began visiting CA in the late afternoon, under the soft glow of dusk falling on the old rooftop. He rolled up his sleeves and helped her fix the tiles, prop the sagging door, and reinforce the low fence in front of the yard to keep the little one from running into the road. The two of them worked together naturally, sharing small smiles and laughter, like a family in the making. That evening, after a long day's work, CA and Hung sat beneath the eaves of the house, sipping green tea as the golden light stretched across the yard. The child nestled in Hung's lap, cheerfully recounting stories from school. They spoke of the future, of a solid home, a simple life, but one filled with love. But that tender moment was abruptly shattered. A sharp voice rang out from the gate. Hung's mother had arrived. No one knew how long she had been standing there. Her eyes locked on CA with cold fury. Before anyone could react, she stormed forward, her voice laced with disdain. "Do you have no shame? I told you clearly, stay away from my son. And yet here you are, brazenly seducing him like this?" CA froze, her face pale. She had prepared herself for this moment, but not for her sudden arrival, nor the cruelty in her words. Hung stood up immediately, stepping in front of CA. His voice was firm, calm, but resolute. "Mother, you shouldn't speak like that. I choose my own life. And you know she's done nothing wrong. She's a good woman. And I love her." "Love?" his mother shouted. "Love a woman who's been broken, has a child of her own, living like this? You've shamed me, Hung." But Hung didn't back down. He softened his tone and took her hand. "Mother, I know you worry about me. But I'm no longer a child. Please, let me live honestly, with the love I've found. I beg you, at the very least, don't hurt the one I care about." A long silence followed. His mother looked at him with conflicted eyes, torn between love, anger, and helplessness. She turned away, her voice trembling. "Come home with me." Hung looked at CA, eyes full of unspoken words, then gave her a small nod. He followed his mother home, but in his heart, a vow had been made. No matter how hard the road ahead, he would protect this love, to the very end. After the stormy confrontation with Hung's mother, CA's heart felt unbearably heavy. Though she managed to remain composed on the outside, the cruel words from that woman cut deep into her pride and the fragile hope she had just begun to allow herself to dream of happiness. That night, after seeing Hung and his mother off, CA sat quietly on the front porch, her gaze lost in the distance beyond the rice fields, where the wind drifted lazily across the land. She held her child close, and silent tears rolled down her cheeks. Maybe I really don't deserve him? That question kept echoing in her mind like a sorrowful whisper from her own conscience. She thought of the past, of her failures, of the gossip whispered behind her back, and of the pitiful look she'd grown used to seeing every time she took her child to the market in the early morning. She didn't blame Hung's mother. She only felt too small in the face of society's harsh judgment. The next morning, Hung returned. He brought a small bouquet, some sweet pastries, and a hopeful smile. But unlike every other time, CA didn't come out to greet him. She stood behind the door, hesitated for a long moment, then finally stepped out, with eyes colder than usual and a distant voice. "Don't come anymore, Hung. We should just be friends." Hung stood frozen, stunned by her words. He looked at her and softly asked, "Is it because of my mother?" CA stayed silent, offering no reply. But her eyes said it all. He knew she was hurting, knew she was pushing him away not because the love was gone, but because she wanted to protect him from the chaos she believed she had caused in his family's eyes. CA, Hung gently placed the bouquet on the small wooden table by the porch. "I know what you're thinking. You think you're not good enough, don't you? But to me, you and your child are the most precious gift I've ever received. My mother, she doesn't fully understand you yet. But I will try. I'll talk to her, little by little. All I ask is, don't let go of me." His words were like a drop of calm water over her fractured heart. She didn't reply, but her eyes welled up again. She lowered her gaze, but deep inside, she was moved by the quiet strength of the man before her. From that day on, CA no longer stopped Hung from visiting, but she also refused to let herself be weak again. Rather than waiting for love to protect her, she chose to become someone worthy of standing beside the man she loved. She began working even harder. Aside from harvesting lotus flowers, she made use of the small garden behind the house, planting vegetables, tending to fruit trees, harvesting them just in time for the morning market. At dawn, before light touched the earth, people would already see the familiar silhouette of that woman carrying her goods to market, small in frame, but fierce in spirit. Every coin she earned was not just to raise her child, but a quiet answer to Hung. "I'm trying. For you. For our child. For the future we once dreamed of." As for Hung, he remained beside her. Quietly. Patiently. Not with grand gestures or hurried declarations, but simply with presence. A steady shoulder, always there, amid a life full of storms. It was a gentle morning, sunlight spilling gold across the winding village roads, when Hung came to visit CA and her child, as he often did. But this time, he didn't just stop by with a few kind words or small gifts. Today, he invited them both into town to shop for the child, new clothes, a school bag, even the tiny pair of shoes CA had once said she couldn't afford. Hung chose each item with care, as if the child were his own flesh and blood. He knelt down to tie the little shoes, smiling warmly as the child squealed with delight over a new toy. CA stood nearby, her eyes welling with quiet emotion. In that moment, she knew, Hung didn't just love her. He loved her child too, with a tenderness that felt real and unconditional. That feeling of being supported, of having someone by her side as a true family, warmed her heart in the midst of so many lingering uncertainties. But while the three of them were enjoying this precious time together, back at home, Hung's mother was growing uneasy. It was a day off, yet Hung hadn't returned. She had a sinking feeling that he was once again with the woman she refused to accept. Fearing he was falling deeper, she left home in a hurry, walking the familiar red dirt road that led straight to CA's house. When she arrived, the old wooden gate was shut, the yard empty. Her heart began to boil with anger. She was about to turn back when she heard the distant sound of a motorbike. She looked up, and just as she feared, it was Hung, with CA and the child on the back, all three laughing like a happy family. Her fury exploded. Right in the middle of the village road, she raised her hand to stop the bike, forcing Hung to brake suddenly. Her face flushed red with rage, eyes burning with disapproval. "Get off that bike, now. What are you trying to do? Do you think you can trap my son by dragging that child around like bait?" Her words lashed out like a whip, hitting CA in the face like a slap. Stunned and speechless, CA could only lower her head as shame and tears battled in her eyes. The child clutched her hand tightly, confused and frightened by the shouting. Hung froze. His eyes widened with disbelief as he watched his mother humiliate the woman he loved. He stepped off the bike and moved between them, voice tight with restraint. "Mom. That's enough. You have no right to speak to her like that. Wake up, Hung," his mother snapped. "What's so great about her? A woman with a past, dragging a child that's not even yours. Do you want to disgrace me in front of the whole village?" "Mom." Hung's voice turned firm, eyes unwavering. "She's the woman I've chosen. And that child, though not mine by blood, I love as my own. I'm begging you, if you can't accept it, at least don't hurt them." The air grew thick with tension. Passers-by began to whisper. Hung gently took his mother's hand and said quietly, "I'll take you home now. Please don't make me choose between you and them." She said nothing, but her eyes were still filled with disapproval as she let him lead her away. Hung glanced back one last time, at CA and the child, standing quietly by the roadside, their eyes clouded with pain. That evening, when everything had calmed down, Hung returned. He brought nothing with him, only a heartfelt apology. He stood before CA's house, not to argue, not to justify, just silently extended his hand. "I'm sorry for what you went through. I know I can't change my mother overnight, but I promise, I won't give up. If you're willing, let's face this together, okay?" CA looked at him. Her eyes still held sadness, but somewhere deep inside, warmth began to rise again. She didn't speak, just quietly reached out and held his hand. A simple touch, but enough to say she believed in him. And she was ready to keep walking forward, with him, no matter how hard the road ahead might be. The love between Hung and CA was never a sweet, rose-strewn story. It was a journey marked by pain, by prejudice, and by the constant tug-of-war between reason and the heart. But it was through that very journey that a deeply genuine love emerged, not loud, not showy, but quiet, enduring, and full of compassion. CA once wanted to let go, thinking she wasn't worthy. Hung once stood at the crossroads between filial duty and love. Yet in the end, they still chose to hold hands, still chose to move forward, not because the path was easy, but because their hearts had truly found each other. Though challenges may still lie ahead, as long as they believe in one another and keep striving together day by day, there will come a time when even Hung's mother will understand. True love doesn't come from someone's past, but from the way they build a future together. If you've been moved by the heartfelt journey of single mother Hai Ca and Officer Hung, feel free to leave them a message, a heart, or simply your well wishes in the comments below. Who knows, your encouragement may just be the strength they need to keep fighting against prejudice and live fully in the love they've chosen. See you again in the next emotional and meaningful story.
Xin chào tất cả mọi người ơi, thì mình vừa mới hoàn thành một video về câu chuyện của mẹ đơn thân Lý Hoài Ca và cảnh sát Hùng á mọi người. Thì cũng như mọi người biết thì nếu như mà bộ phim cũng như là kênh chính của Lý Hoài Ca thì đã chiếu khá là xa rồi, nhưng mà mình muốn khi mình làm thì mình sẽ làm từ đầu nội dung để cho mọi người có thể xem trọn bộ từ đầu đến cuối. Tại vì cũng còn rất là nhiều khán giả không phải là đã từng xem kênh Lý Hoài Ca rồi mà chưa từng xem, thì mình sẽ muốn là mình làm từ đầu để cho mọi người có thể nắm bắt được từ đầu đến cuối nội dung của câu chuyện, thì nó sẽ trọn vẹn và có ý nghĩa hơn. Nên là sẽ có nhiều người xem rồi và sẽ cảm thấy là ở đây là video cũ rồi, tại sao lại làm video cũ, thì mình mới lên video và mình cũng có giải thích cho mọi người một xíu như vậy. Và mình mong rằng mọi người sẽ vẫn ủng hộ kênh mình nhiều hơn, và mình sẽ làm lần lượt và dần dần sẽ đến cốt truyện hiện tại nha mọi người. Và mong mọi người sẽ tiếp tục ủng hộ kênh mình nhiều hơn nữa nhé.